An example is to just look at, if you want to paint your house, and then you've got some, you wanted some kind of an idea in terms of how much it would cost. So the first thing that you would perhaps show this house, or even just share some of the details to the painters, is basically the house. So the first question that they might ask is, how many rooms do you have, right? So you say we've got a kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and perhaps a hall or a living room. Now, that is important for them to be able to actually say. If it's a very senior or a experienced painter, they might actually say, okay, it would cost roughly about £10,000 or something, right? So this is based on their previous estimate of a similar one, because this person's are really, really very, very knowledgeable, very experienced. They know that this roughly would take. Obviously, they would not be able to commit to that. They'll say, okay, roughly it's about that. Just have this idea. And then the first thing that you would then ask is, okay, how much does it cost? And then you would also ask another important question in terms of how much time will it take for you to paint the full house, or whatever the number of rooms. So you also ask the schedule. You need to understand it. The third thing you might ask is in terms of the resources. Would you bring the paint, or should we buy the paint? How much paint do we need, right? So that's another thing. So if it's a wallpaper, it's completely different. And if you want one quote or 2 quotes of this, that also differs. So your quotation of how much it would cost for your house to be painted really depends on the size of the house. Just imagine if this same painter wants to actually have a look at this house by somebody else, from one of your friends or somebody else. Would they be in the same position to actually give a rough, as I say, finger in the air quote, just by asking the number of, it's just 2 bedrooms and 1 hall kitchen, it would cost 10,000? No. For this kind of a house, they say, I need to have a look into the house. I need to have a look into the house, or show me the photos, show me the plan of the house. If you have got an architecture, whatever it is, then they would actually be able to get to the next level of that. And then perhaps they will schedule a visit to the house, and then be able to look at everything, and then be able to commit. What is the difference between this and that? This is fairly simple, run-of-the-mill solution. The person is experienced, so that's what it is called as a top-down estimate. So it's actually kind of, okay, done deal. But whereas here, it's based on the expert's opinion. Whereas in this context, in the second one on the right, here we're talking about fairly complex, and here where we need the detailing, the details of how many rooms, and what are the dimensions of each room, whether it's a rectangle, a square, do we have to paint the roof, how big is the roof, what is the kind of the structure of this, how many coats of this paint, everything actually detailed here, right? So this is where we need to really get into the specifics, and this is what we call as a work breakdown structure. So this is a bottom-up estimate. So we'll go through this in detail in the context of an IT application development. But this is just to give a fair idea in terms of the concept of estimation. So you've got a top-down estimate, whereas you've got a bottom-up estimation on the right, which is very detailed, which actually goes into the specifics of nuances of the specific piece of work that is involved. So here we're talking about, for example, this person might say, I can't paint this whole house. I'll have to actually get 2 more persons. Hey, by the way, there is another specialist who would actually do the wallpaper. I can't do the wallpaper myself, right? So here you're talking about the resources required in a very detailed context, whereas in this on the left, you're really not bothered too much about the who does what and the specialization, because it's fairly simple. It's a top-down estimate. It's just as a finger in the air kind of thing. That's what it is involved. And bear in mind that the estimates of top-down and bottom-up, they're not going to be equal, obviously, because it's 2 different approaches. So in the same context, we'll have a look at how we can build an e-commerce website. For example, let's take the example of selling mobile accessories, like, for example, the iPhone cases or Samsung Galaxy watches, or something like that, the Gear watches. So for example, all of these, the online shop is going to actually sell these accessories. That's the functionality, the main USP of this website. And if you want to build an estimate for, if you want to come up with an estimate for developing, for designing, for developing and deploying this, this particular website. So what's the kind of, what is the kind of approach that we need to take? So obviously you need to understand the first and foremost thing is basically the sizing. We need to understand the size of this. You then have a look at each of the functionality. That's where the backlog comes in. We actually build a backlog in terms of what is involved, what are the functions you need. You might need, for example, you might need a shopping cart. You would need to have a catalog, for instance, a catalog just to show all the various categories of the items. It could be phone cases, it could be the phone screens, covers, and things like that. All of these, so you actually have categories, and each of the categories you've got the specific products or items, and for each of them you've had the item description, blah blah blah, all of that. So the functionality for this is just to show, and from the user point of view, I should be able to actually pick and choose. As a customer, I can select an item so that I can add it to my cart. So that's a user story. So that from the context of the e-commerce website.